Welcome to Black Businesses Matter, a podcast about why Black businesses matter and the benefits of collaborating and advocating for Black businesses to drive impact. Each episode will cover legacy, hope, Black joy, funding sources, cultural shifts, equality, and so much more. We will provide inspiration and action while spreading some joy to a thriving community of Black business owners and leading thought leaders.
I am Larvetta Lofton, your host and the founder of the L3 Agency.
Known as the brand maven who transforms organizations with her storytelling prowess, meet Larvetta L. Lofton, host of Black Businesses Matter, a podcast about why Black businesses matter and the benefits of collaborating and advocating for Black businesses to drive impact.
Welcome back to another episode of Black Businesses Matter. You all, this is season 10, and I am stepping out of my comfort zone. I love to be uncomfortable, so that's nothing new to me, but that doesn't mean that I am not frightened, that I don't have anxiety, that I'm not nervous. I want y'all to know that I am, because this is something we've never done before. But as someone who has done 10 seasons, I've never done 10 seasons either. And so I do it scared, and it's okay. Because if I make a mistake, guess what? Y'all still are going to listen to us, right? I know that. So guys, our next guest, I am elated to have her. I had the pleasure of her joining me as part of something we hadn't done with the agency. And of course, and then we came together on a possible RFP together. She's a dope sister. She's a Chicago native. I've had the pleasure to be introduced to her. And I just feel like she's my sister, that I just met. But it's like we just met each other. We just found out that we sisters. That's the feeling I have for Jayla. And once I tell you who she is and what she does, I promise you're going to lean in. You're going to put this episode on repeat. You're going to share this with a friend. You're going to share this with family. You're going to share this with entrepreneurs. That is what we want you to do, is share this episode, that these are real people that want to see you grow spiritually, mentally, because we're talking about trauma. And I know you're thinking trauma and Black businesses matter. Where does that fit? Oftentimes we've built business off of trauma, right? There's something that happened in our lives, that's happened within our families, that's happened to us, and a business is birth. So trauma isn't bad. It's just that, how do we deal with it and cope with it? And Jayla is the person that's helping not just people, but she's helping organizations. Jayla Head is a psychotherapist, speaker, writer, and founder of Advaco Collective Care Consulting. It is a mental health consultancy dedicated to providing compassionate, innovative, and culturally sensitive services. As I told you all, she's from Chicago. She centers her business around accessibility, visibility, and advocacy in her approach to mental wellness, championing the integration of mental health into overall well-being through education, care, and accessible resources. For the past 4 years, she has provided therapy to adults navigating major life transitions and to dating and married couples, drawing on 7 years of research experience in these areas to inform her clinical work. Since founding Advaco Collective, she has collaborated with corporations like Thompson Hotels, which I'm a big fan of Thompson Hotels, and Network 127, as well as mission-driven nonprofits across Metro Atlanta and Chicago. Her work bridges corporate and nonprofit sectors, offering strategic guidance in mental health education, program development, partnerships, and research-driven evaluations. Jayla's dual sector experience enables her to cultivate holistic mental wellness strategies that support both organizational impact and community empowerment. Welcome to the show, Jayla.
Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be back.
It's crazy, right, Jayla? Because the thing that we figured out, right? I am a marketing comms, right, agency, and you are a mental health consulting company. But the thing that we both live thrive and support is culturally sensitive engagement. And that's how we were able to connect on that side. And so the fact that we are here in this place, different industries, but we care about the same thing. Before we kind of dive into what you do, what I want to do is, who is Jayla as a little girl? What would people say about Jayla?
Oh man, that is such a good question that I honestly was not prepared for. I'm thinking about how my mom would describe me as a little girl. She would always tell me I was very, very honest. And so when I was around people that I really, took a liking to, you could definitely tell. But if I was also around, friends or family members that I did not, I was pretty transparent with that. And I think it's because I've always had the ability to empathize and to feel things that other people couldn't very intensely. So I've always been very, very sensitive. I can feel a room before I even walk into it. And as a child, I was to myself. I read a lot of books. When my cousins would play outside, I would stay with my aunts or stay with my mom, stay with the elders in the house. And so I think with that, I've also developed more of a mature spirit. I remember one of my old professors. He said, Jayla, I don't know what old lady is living inside of you, but one day you'll figure it out. So I would say I'm a very compassionate person. I'm pretty honest and transparent in the work that I do, and also the relationships I value and the person that I am. And I would consider myself to be innovative as well. I'm always looking for solutions that need to be created. And so that's what kind of keeps me going.
So was this the track for you? When you said, okay, this is what, all the things, doctors, lawyers, those are jobs that people right? Did you say, I want to be a mental health professional?
It kind of found me. Awesome. In high school, I went to performing arts high school. And so I danced pretty professionally. And one of my dreams was to, be a Black ballerina. But then I realized that I didn't necessarily have the privileges needed to do that comfortably, right? I knew me going to get an education, it also meant that my success needed to impact my family. And I knew that as a dancer, I wouldn't be able to do that. And so I really put my head in my books, and psychology always kind of got me. And when I started to do research on Black resiliency in couples, which is literally where my heart lives, I realized that I wanted to be a part of the solution. So I wanted to help couples rather than just researching them. So that's how I've been able to bridge the gap between research and actually being a mental health professional, and having a very active role in a lot of people's lives. So it found me, and I wouldn't change it for the world.
Wow. And I say that, right? People have professional services in a lot of ways. We're in the people business. That's what we do, right? We're in the people business. And so in this track, I want to clear the air, right? I want to make sure that people can have this moment to be safe. What is a psychotherapist? I think we say that term. I don't know that people really know what a psychotherapist, because some be like, that means I'm crazy. That means she's going to help. She going to give me therapy because I'm crazy. And what's a mental health therapist, right? So helping us to make that distinction.
So they're actually used interchangeably. A psychotherapist, a mental health therapist, the root of psycho just deals with the mind, right? So you have physical therapists, you have therapists that work with, sound bowls and all of that. The root of the work that I do is going to always be mental. It's going to always be exploring the mind, exploring narratives, exploring what lives up here. and everything else is complementary to that. So that's what that means. When I'm talking and when I'm, working with clients through things, it's going to always be about really untangling a lot of the fuzziness in our minds, and finding a clear path forward.
That's good. And I think so. It's just a term, right? Don't spend
It's
a lot.
just a term.
Yeah, don't. But I do think, right, culturally, which is why I love you leading into being culturally sensitive, being sensitive to knowing that people still feel that way, Jayla. So when people feel like that, how do they show up when you work with them? Like, how do they show up knowing that you are this psychotherapist and you're about to diagnose me?
Yeah, no, that's such a great question. And truthfully, the root of Advaco is bringing mental health care, education, and resources to people versus the other way around. And so when you ask me, how do people show up? My first thought is, well, how do I show up in a space? Because that is going to really determine the shift in others. So, for example, I worked with a nonprofit based out of Chicago that works with Black youth in Inglewood. And so I remember doing an activation with them, and I titled it, "Are You Good?" And we really talked about how to have conversations about mental health with your peers, specifically with young Black boys. And so I had to show up as a Chicago girl who happens to have a degree, multiple degrees, and who happens to be a therapist. I couldn't put the therapist first. And so when you're wanting to connect with people, when you're wanting people to really understand the accessibility of mental health, you have to lead with the person that you are. And so that would be my answer, right? Like, how am I showing up in a space? That is going to then impact the audience.
That's good, Jay. I think that's so powerful. What are some of your early encounters with entrepreneur? Like, did you want to be while you kind of knew that this found you? But did entrepreneurship find you, or did that just kind of always wanted to like run your show?
Oh my gosh, no. I never wanted to be in business. I never wanted to study business. I think that's why I also went into psychology, because I was like, oh my gosh, no math. I don't have to count anything. All I can do is just read, annotate, analyze. I literally hate numbers, like still to this day. But when I found myself in graduate school, and I realized like all of the things that I'm learning about mental wellness and community and really healing, this information is like staying within this group of people, right? The educated, the wealthy, the people, that have had privileges to navigate their lives very differently. But like my family at home, they don't know, what I'm learning, or they, don't have access to that as intimately as I do, because I've been able to go out and, seek higher education and et cetera, et cetera. And so that's when I knew like, okay, I have to do something about this. I have to figure out how to get this to people. And at first it became, more of an educational platform, to really reduce the stigma. But then I realized that organizations and individuals also were trying to figure out how to build bridge this same gap, I should say. And that's when I realized like, okay, Advaco has to be a solution. I remember I was in Chicago and I was at a gala, and I had met, I'm forgetting her name. I had met someone, and she mentioned, she was like, there's 1,000 nonprofits that are all doing the same thing. And I'm trying to figure out, if we brought all of our efforts together, the impact that we could have. And so I started to ask her questions like, well, what are the barriers that your nonprofit is running into? And that's when I realized, okay, now I found my footing. It's not about being another nonprofit that is passionate, but it's about how do I be a part of the expansion or more intentional impact that the nonprofits are already kind of going after. And so it found me. And honestly, I'm taking it day by day. Like, I still don't even know what's going on half of the time. All I know is, what I do know, and then I'm learning, things along the way. So,
yeah. And I'm a firm believer, Jayla, that you have to stay a student in business. I was just telling my team, I had a mid-year team today, and I never want them to think like I'm here. Like, we here. And to your point, right? Entrepreneurship. And I knew I wanted to be free. I'm going to tell you that. I knew I wanted to be free to do what I wanted to do. And I knew that I wanted to make a difference. Those were two things that I knew very clear. Now, what that meant, I didn't know, but I knew I wanted to change narratives, right? And what does that look like? And so knowing that you don't necessarily know the path, like, okay, is it going to look like this? And then it's going to look like this, but you just go forth with it. How, like, for you, you've had to process trauma as an entrepreneur? Like, how have you seen it within your own business?
Mm-hmm. That's such a good question. I see it in how I show up. When I first decided, because at one point I was at a crossroads. I was like, is Advaco going to be a 501c3 or is it going to be a LLC? Like, what am I going to do? And when I, realized that I wanted to go the business route, the entrepreneurship route, I felt like I needed to hit the ground running. I felt like I needed to hustle, and go, and really make everybody proud, in the next 6 months. And here I am 4 years later, and I figured that the winning and the success is actually in the process. And so I had to unlearn a lot of things. And we talked about being transparent. So I remember starting therapy again. And I'm so thankful to my therapist. And he would always ask, like, well, what are you afraid of? What are you afraid of? And I finally figured out, like, well, I'm afraid that the people that I love won't get to see me win, right? Because growing up in Chicago, people don't grow old, right? Yeah. I've been met with death, way more than I've been met with anything else. Wow. So when I think about my wedding, I think about, like, oh, who's going to make it? Who's going to be there? Yeah. And when I think about, a successful business and being a business owner, well, I don't know who's still going to be around. And so I hit the ground running. And I had to really take a moment and realize, like, I can't, kill myself, for lack of better words, trying to make sure that other people that I love are able to witness me and see me in a way. And I really just have to trust God that, like, whatever the plan is, that is the plan. And whoever's going to see me or I'm going to be able to support, I just have to realize what was out of my control, but I was trying to hold on to something because, feeling like everything is always happening to you when you grow up in an environment like that.
Yeah. And I think I appreciate you really just giving us all perspective on that, because as you were thinking, right, it hit home for me, because knowing that didn't experience death at a young age, but experiencing death at a time in your life that you didn't think about it. So here it is. It hit you at the early stage. For lack of a better, it kind of hit me in the middle stage. And I'm just like, I've done all this in my life without, my mom, right? I mean, I've done all this with my mom and now she's gone. So this second, so there is some things that I could feel that pain, within yourself, and like, oh my gosh. So when the nice things, who's going to be there? And the part, and I think as business owners, people don't humanize us, right? We're not humans, right? We have to, right, show up. I always say this: show up, pay the bills, pay the payroll, do all the things. But inside of us, we are also going through our own challenges, right? And I do think that that's I think that's the issue. So I want to ask you this. Was there anybody who influenced you to go into entrepreneurship as you figured that thing out? Was there anybody that you were like, who was your circle of influence around that?
Oh, that's such a good question. Initially, I was like, oh, I don't think so. But then as you kept talking, I would say that a huge influence for me was, I consider her a sister. We both live in Atlanta. She's a realtor, investor. I mean, hustler all around, Chicago girl. We met each other freshman year of college. So we've been, friends for the past 10 years. And she never influenced me to go into business in the sense of like, Jayla, you need to start a business. But when she bet on herself, I was like, I could do that too. Yeah. And I saw how things just came, as she continued to work hard, rub shoulders, be strategic. And I'm still learning from her, and still I'm inspired by, the woman that she is in her business. But that I think that would be my biggest influence, which is also interesting. We're the same age. Like this isn't, a mentor of some sort as far as like, an age gap. But she inspires me every day to kind of keep going, even when I don't want to.
I think we really don't give love to peer-to-peer mentorship. I am glad that you did that, because we think that the mentorship has to be here. I'm a big fan. Like, all of my mentees mentor me. Like, because there's a lot that I don't know, right? I know some things, but they're just things I don't know. And I love that you said someone who influenced you was your peer. And I think that's a beautiful thing, because you have somebody that is cheerleading for you, right? And at the same time, they went into, right? So that's how it's supposed. Like, we on the track getting it. Like, you getting it, I'm getting it. Let's do it. And I think that level of partnership is inside of that level of mentorships. So, as I, shaped through this trauma, right? And we're unpacking. Part of the reason why I did this, Jayla, full disclosure, was like, right, 2.5 years ago, I lost my mother, right, in November 2023. Shortly after that, I lost my best friend, brother, who I've known since I was 6 years old, right? It's unimaginable. And they both left, and they were good people. And my mama loved him. He loved my mama. Like, it was just like, how you do this, right? So you don't know that, like, in the midst of business, like, I literally had to take a sabbatical. I had to take a break. I just couldn't function. Like, I couldn't get my left to then follow my right. It was just like, if there were bad habits, there were bad habits that I was taking on, because I just didn't know what that meant. And so how does that, and so that was mine, was death, right? And I also, the other part of this that came out of this was that I experienced divorce, right? 12 years ago. And so I always said the D's, right? The debt, the divorce, and the death. Those, and they even say those will send you off. Like, they could literally send you into the mental hospital. Like, and they've said that will cause you to go into depression at a high rate. So, you come from a place where you're like, I've experienced debt. I know I've experienced that with negative bank accounts, right? Next, divorce. Then you have death, right? And it's your mama and your two people that have known you a long time. So you go into this place as this business owner. So then you start to question, do I really even want to be an entrepreneur? How about I just want to check in and go to a job, clock in, clock out, stay under the radar. Nobody has to know. And it just felt like safe for me, right? So I felt like there's got to be so many other people who are entrepreneurs that are faced with these 3 horrible D's, right? In that space, they're not talking about it. They're not this. So I want to ask you, how have you helped people to really understand that really is part of life, right? And how do we cope through that as entrepreneurs? Because there might be people going through that right this minute, right, in their business. And I hear people, girl, I'm just, girl, life be lifing, right? And I want to dig in. What does that look like, right? And how do you help them shape that to know that the entrepreneurship is that the superpower through it? I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I think it's exactly what you said when you mentioned it's a part of life. And so being able to assist clients and people in understanding transitions, right? And seeing, death and divorce and even, having financial strain as transitions versus the end road. That is what I found helpful, because the thing about, devastating events, as such, is that you don't see the other side. And so what I try to do is help people understand that, well, right now you get to rewrite what things look like. Like, I know that we thought that mom was going to be here forever, right? Because she is our superhero. Why wouldn't she be? But now we've been met with a circumstance that tells us otherwise. So what story do we write now? Is it a story that honors her with what we do? Is it a story that, I'm going to take a rest because I want to connect back to myself after grieving? So that's what it's about, reframing, and also how do we rewrite our story? Because oftentimes with those transitions, it happens to you. It's not something that you ask for. It's not something that you even prepare yourself for. And so the opportunity to rewrite your story gives you the agency to respond to this event. Versus like, okay, what am I going to do now? I have nothing left to do. Well, yes, you do. When you muster up that courage, let's pick up the pen. Let's get to writing. But this is still, a story for you to rewrite what this looks like.
I love that you said rewrite the story. This is where I get to be a little transparent. I remember with my mom, I'm a journal junkie. I've got several journals as a little girl. And I told my therapist, I said, I can't write anymore. It's just when I just couldn't. I couldn't write the pen. I couldn't write. I couldn't even write. I think the right my mom has left died. You know what I mean? Those things were very triggering. And she told me, she says, you're taking what, and I don't know how she said it, but the way that I interpret it, because I don't know how everything she said, but she was like, I don't need you to journal right now. The body can't journal right now, but you're on autopilot to journal because that is what you do. But we're not, that ain't, I didn't tell you to go journal. I didn't say go journal. And it's just like that thing where you're so used to that because that was your life for so long. That's how you got out of those situations. You journal. Well, here's what happens. That's not it for right now. And that was hard. And I think as entrepreneurs, right, a lot of times, and even as people, right, this is what we have been doing. This is what worked for us. This is that. And it didn't work anymore, Jayla. Like it didn't. Like the idea of like sitting still and journaling was not my jam anymore. It just wasn't. My jam was, in some regards, my jam was I needed a glass of wine to go to sleep. I just needed those things to settle myself. And it became something that I wasn't used to because that wasn't my thing, right? But that became the thing. And I like that you said rewrite the story. So when you say that, what happens when you don't want to rewrite the story, right? That you're not, right? I hear you, but I don't want to rewrite. I want this story. This is the story that I want. And why I don't want to rewrite the story. So how do you cope with that, right? As this entrepreneur, right, who's experienced this trauma of, no longer having a business for whatever reason, or no longer having that child that was once in their business and now the child is no longer here. I don't want to do that. Mm-hmm. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, these are such great questions. When we're feeling that much tension or internal conflict, I think it's okay to take a moment and just rest, right? And not do. And I think doing is a lot of what comes with the Black experience. In order for things to change, you need to do. We aren't necessarily socialized in that. Sometimes existing can be more than enough. Sometimes resting can be more than enough. And so if I am met with a client, or if even I'm feeling like, I'm not ready to do that. You talking about rewriting and I'm still wishing that, this person was here, or that this situation looked like this. I think it's okay to just sit back, relax, cry, eat, do all of the things, and also slowly but surely start to take inventory of what feels good long term versus what feels good in the moment, right? I know I'm a stress eater, and when I'm stressed, I go right on to get some greasy, sometimes licking my fingers. And at the end of the day, in the long term, that's not necessarily feasible, but maybe in that moment, that's what I need, right? So being able to understand and to connect yourself with your actions, I think when you're on autopilot, you're just doing and you don't know. But being able to sit back, relax, take inventory when you can, but don't rush yourself. There's no need to show up other than who you are. And if you can't move, you can't move.
That's true. And to know that, so let me say this. When you think about entrepreneurship, right? Have you noticed that there is a connection between entrepreneurship and trauma in our communities? Right?
Absolutely.
And I'm seeing it now, even with my young people, right? I just started this. For them, it's right debt. They don't have any money. So we start this business, right? I don't think we talk about that, right? So you feel like you have to go to work or you have to do these things. So have you seen that there's a connection to that where it's unresolved trauma that creates this business?
Absolutely. I think the hustle culture is actually rooted in trauma, right? Because historically, with our families, we're paying backwards instead of paying forward. So I went out and got my degrees, but you have first gen college students that are sending money back home to make sure mom, cousins, grandma, have groceries. That's a very unique experience that has been normalized. And so, yes, it's hustle, 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 because when I hustle, I see results, right? But I think that's when it's important for you to slow down, do exactly what you feel like you shouldn't do, to rewire your brain, start to think about why, you're starting this business, what are you wanting to impact, the solutions that you're wanting to create, but also, what's the sustainability of this model, right? That's a lot of the conversations that I even have with couples who are in business together or who have businesses apart from each other, but are hustlers. How is this sustainable, right? Like, how does this align with where you want to go? And then that way we can be a little bit strategic in our next moves versus just making sure I get up and go, because that's not always helpful.
You're listening to Black Businesses Matter, and we will continue our conversation in a second. But first, take a listen to this special message for our BBM fam.
We know how important it is to stay connected, so why not join our BBM Fam Club for special announcements and exclusive offers by texting BBM FAM to 312-300-1300. That's BBM FAM to 312-300-1300 today. Now let's get back to Black Businesses Matter.
It's so interesting, and I know we're in this era of trauma. It's so interesting. I had a mentor several years ago. And, I was hustling. If I tell you they own like a bunch of restaurants, they're in the aviation, like they are the like cream of the cream de la for real. And he said to me, Larvetta, I think that you are an incredible person, but I think you're all over the place. And for a minute, it was like a punch, right? And so he said, I want you to read this book, The One Thing. And The One Thing changed my entire life and business, because one thing says, what could you do? What if you focus on one thing? That doesn't mean you still not be present for your family. Doesn't mean, but the one thing is, if you're going to focus on expansion, then expand your network, expand your time. And he, in some cultures, right? I think they got it, right? In our culture, we may not have it. I'm not going to say all cultures, we all know it's not all created equal. But when he said that, he was like, one thing, and I will tell you something, Jayla, in the early part of my business, like I heard things that were sucker punches for me. So I had to humble myself, but they gave me information that was not told in my community. People would have never said this to me, and they said it to me. And I think it was such a game changer. And I think when you talk about rewrite your story, right? From a try that psychotherapist, try something new, like be open to it. Because I tell people that changed my whole business model. He said, if you focused on one thing, what would it look like? And I'm literally living out what he said. What if your agency, you don't have to have the separate brand of this. The agency, you are the agency. They gonna hire you as the CEO to speak. You don't have to make a separate platform. Why are you you're working, you're hustling. But we know, let's talk about this, right? The music, the culture, the hustle, that's in our music. That's in the things that we do. So how do we unlearn this so that we can not only produce fruit, but be able to sit in the fruit?
Yeah. I mean, in order for us to receive and experience things we haven't before, we have to do the things that we've never done. And so with that being said, right, like I grew up single parent. It was me and my oldest brother. And I mean, my mom hustled. She got up and she didn't sleep until she was done working. And so I knew that because of the sacrifices that she made and that my aunts made to raise me as well, that I wanted my life to look a little bit differently. Like I wanted rest. I didn't know how it was going to happen. I didn't know if it could happen. But I also knew that like it's not meant for me to collapse at the finish line. Like once I run this race, once I win and I break that ribbon, I want to be able to cheer. I want to be able to jump for joy. I want to be able to wave at my family and say, I love you. Thank you for supporting me. I can't do that if I get up and I hit the ground running every single day, not taking care of myself, not prioritizing my relationships, not prioritizing, like you said, peer-to-peer mentorship, growing from people, learning from people. And so I realized like, okay, I haven't seen this path chartered yet, but I know for a fact that I'm being called to something different. And so I have to put my foot in front of the other. And like that is enough. Right? Versus trying to plan out this path, you know, from here to 10 years out. Yeah. But it does take a lot of unlearning and doing the things that you've never seen before.
Yeah. Because my mother was, I tell you, I had to have a plan for everything. I think there's a good lesson in that, right? But it's like we can over plan too, right? And so, but one thing that she would say was, do you have a plan for that? And rightfully so, because I do believe spiritually, write the vision, make it plain. I'm still a believer that you have to write that plan out for it to be real. Because if it's in your head, nobody else gets to hold you accountable in that space, right? If it's in your head. So I appreciate it. But the thing that I take today that my mother gave was trusting the other person with your plan doesn't necessarily mean that it has to go together, but that I was able to give it to somebody to say, that's not, you know what I mean? Yeah, try that. Yeah, do that. Versus, right, we're really thinking the plan and sometimes is for us, but sharing that plan with someone else, I think is the power. Because in that space, it wasn't like, because we got the plan done, but it wasn't exactly how it was written, but we got it done, right? And I think that that's the part that I take today that I do differently. Like she's going to say, what's the plan? But now it's like having someone on the other side to be accountable to say, remember, you did that plan and it said da-da-da-da. I'm not telling you to do it, but just know that that's kind of where you started. So look how you've grown, or look how you've, you know what I mean? And I think that that's the part that your cheerleader, my mother was my biggest cheerleader. And so being able to do this, she'll be like, you know, you put all this money away and now look at you, you got all this money in the bank, right? You know, but it was that plan to say that I didn't know because she's the only person. But if you never tell anybody, I think the other person, you don't have anyone to really give you that growth moment to cheer you on too. Yeah. So I want to say this, right? How do we create, and I say this you, but I also say we, right? Because I'm in this, create boundaries in your business to protect your mental and emotional well-being?
I'm so happy that you asked this question because I feel like I'm finally reaching a point where I haven't arrived, but I'm arriving. So something that I started last year was taking a sabbatical for the month of July.
Wait. So let's take a breath. So people, she said this to me. We were like trying to eat. I was like, y'all, I think Jayla is on sabbatical. You can't talk to her in July. We sending emails. So I just had to interrupt you because you said that in like April. Maybe it's like, I'm going on sabbatical. I was like, really? That's pretty dope. But I did hold on to that. So thank you. Thank you for that.
Yeah. And you have to. July is Black BIPOC Mental Health Awareness Month. And it's also my birthday month. Wow. And so I used to go back and forth with like, oh, I haven't earned enough to take a sabbatical. I don't have enough contracts to take a sabbatical. Yeah. But I don't need to earn my rest. Like it's actually needed to fuel things. And stepping back, I realized for me, community is my superpower. I can get into the throes. I can stay in my office for days on end, not leave unless I need to get gas and groceries. But that's when I'm depleted, I'm deprived. when I'm hanging out with my homegirls, catching up over cocktails or whatever the case may be, I start to get more creative, and I'm learning what are people interested in knowing about mental health, right? Yeah. I'm seeing a pattern like, oh, my homegirls, my homeboys, everybody is struggling with this one thing. So maybe there's a resource that I can create, or maybe there's a partnership that I can go after. And so it really is about rewiring and figuring out your core, your purpose, and what fuels. With me, I realized without community, there is no Advaco. And so I had to do things that it doesn't look
sexy.
It doesn't look traditional. Yeah. It's not sexy. It's not traditional. My business does not stay afloat if I stay in the house and I'm at my computer 12 hours a day. No, I have to go out. I have to rub shoulders. I have to hug on my people.
Right. Yeah.
And so, boundaries around time, but also boundaries around what's important. And for me, that's community. And I feel like as you build your business, you realize what that is. Sometimes it may not come to you when you initially start something new.
So if you were to tell a business owner, what are 3 boundaries that we should put?
Oh, something around time. Something around time, whether it's cut when you respond to emails and when you don't. Yes. Yeah. Sabbatical. Don't work for free. My mom, she called me for advice. She'll say, Jayla, I'm sending you a Zelle for lunch. Wow. The little things. People have to value the expertise that you have. Yeah. And sometimes it's not in the form of money, but sometimes it's in the form of love and support. Yes. So making sure that your community is pouring back into you, that has to be imperative. And then last but not least, figure out what's your safe space. As a therapist, yes, I'm in therapy, but I also realize I got to move my body to feel good. So with that, I block off my calendar when I go to Pilates. I block off my calendar when I need to go to a stretch class, because that is also a part of my mental wellness. So priorities around your time, priorities around, how other people are investing into your business and who you are as a business owner. And then last but not least, figuring out what's your safe space and prioritizing that.
So, Jayla, I have this thought. It's a business. Don't nobody steal it, but it is a business idea that I've had for several years. I don't know that I'm going to do it. I've always said I can come up with it. It doesn't mean I have to execute it. But I believe that when you are at your highest physically, mentally, that you perform at your best in business. And I think there's correlation. So I used to work out at Orange Theory, right, years ago. I still love it, Orange Theory. So shout out to Orange Theory. And they would get these splat points on the board. For me, it meant that's what I can do. So if I had 25, I'm like, tomorrow I'm doing 28. And in my mind, what it would force me to say is, today I'm going to make 15% more than what I made last month. But that wasn't how I was wired, right? It was this, but that level of the way that the numbers with me and the physical, I think it opens up, it helps you rewrite how you think. It really, because at that moment, right, you're not really thinking about your business, right? You're trying to get those splat points in. So then you take that model and implement it. And I'm a firm believer, because I've watched myself, the discipline that I have, which to your point of just my physical health, because I went through, with caregiving, I just did not take care of myself. I was just I did not have any attention to myself because I was caregiving, and I didn't know how to do. So that was it. You don't know how to caregive, run a business, do this, be with your partner. You just didn't know because you didn't have anything. You don't have anything around you. So physically, I was just a mess, right? And so, but I gave myself this moment where I said, kind of when this happened, I'm going to get control of my physical health. I'm going to not take meds. They're trying to give me meds. I was like, no, I am going to focus, and I'm going to get these numbers down. It is important. And I think that what we realize is, to your point with the hustle, that the body is suffering, and the body is really, really wanting you to feed it. And I've learned that so I don't know what the term is, Jayla, because you probably know the term, but I am it's not an empath. So when I experience stuff, I feel it in my body. in my nervous system. So when stuff is, I can feel it. Like I'm very aware that it's in my body, and it's I can't do it. It's people. It could be, it's just a number of things. And so she was like, that's how you respond to that. So it's in your body. You got to figure out how to get it out your body and release it. And so, but if you asked me that probably 15, 20 years ago, I wouldn't be able to articulate that, right? But today, because of self-awareness, that I'm aware enough to be like, the body is off. So let me put it back on track, right? So I do want to, as one question I want to ask you about my extroverts and my introverts, right? We talk about this all the time, and I've realized I'm an extrovert, right? But I surround myself with introverts, right? They are the introverts. I'm the extroverts. I got to be woo-ah. But then I'd be worried to freak out when it's all over. So I think it's hilarious. So this balance of like this extroverts and introverts. So on the mental health stuff, how does an extrovert show up in an entrepreneur, right? As an entrepreneur, and how does the introvert? Because I think one helps the other one, but I want to know what's your thoughts behind that.
Yeah, I haven't thought much about this deeply, but my first gut reactions is that the people that are more introverted, I'm thinking of introspection. They're constantly thinking about things inwardly and also acting on things inwardly. And so this could mean the way that they find solutions may be a little bit more research oriented, or anything that is a little bit more isolating, versus your extroverted people. They're getting in the field, right? I got this question. I need to do a focus group. I need to call my homegirls. I need to figure out like what the people on the ground are doing and saying about this. And I think, like you said, both complement one another very well. And it kind of brings me to the point that, as entrepreneurs, when we are seeking solutions, community support and community perspective is just as important as what you're finding in research articles and magazine articles. So along with the whole like staying curious as a business owner, you got to get your feet out into the field while also being able to lean on research and, those kind of overarching things as well.
I love to stay curious. That is me. I'm going to ask about questions. How did this happen? Well, what did you do? Well, what do you suggest? So what role has healing played in your ability, like with ability for people to lead and make clear decisions? Because I would think if you're not healed, right, you make bad decisions. I don't know. I mean, could that be the result? So how has the healing part helped you make really clear decisions about relationships, right? Business relationships, children, all the things, right? It's not just from a business, but how does that healing help?
I think of healing in the same way that I think about harmony, in a sense where you don't really arrive to a place where life is consistently harmonious or you've healed, right? But things feel like they make sense. And so I know for me, healing intentionally has helped me dream more and helped me dream beyond what I've seen. And so maybe for some entrepreneurs, it's been important that, I make this much money because I want to be able to feed my family, which is a valuable perspective and a valuable driver, but it can't be everything. And so as I've gone through my journey, I've thought about, well, if my wildest dreams could come true, what would that look like? And as I heal, my dreams expand, because I'm thinking about not only what I can do and how I can impact the world, but how I can feel throughout it. And initially, I wasn't always considering my place in this journey of entrepreneurship.
How have you really helped, like, some of your past challenges that have helped organizations navigate these high stress environments, right? Because we're in a high stress environment right now from a political climate. I mean, I tell people we still have residue from COVID, right? And so how have you helped organizations make, in these challenging times?
Yeah, that's a great question. Something that organizations and corporations don't do very well is ask the people that they serve, whether it's employees, whether it's their audience, what is it that needs to be changed? And so as, whether it's entrepreneurs or whether it's a corporation, we go into solution mode. Okay, this is a pattern that we're seeing, and so therefore we need to act this way. And so oftentimes what I'm finding is important is to get that data from the people that you're trying to impact change on. And so that slows down the process, that, provides a little bit more insight into options, into areas that, may need to be massaged. But that's the key, right? Who are you trying to serve, and, how are you trying to serve them better? But what do they need? Not what do you think they need? And even as a therapist, I pride myself on, I have the degrees, but like, you live as you 24 hours of a day. And so there's no way that I'm the expert in your world. It really is this co-creation of us figuring out this journey together. I'm in the passenger seat, but you are driving. I don't work harder than my clients. Like, I have, these kind of things that I align myself with to keep me grounded. And so it's the same thing when I'm servicing corporations. Who are you trying to impact, and how are you trying to impact them better? And how are you incorporating their voice into the solution? That's step one.
So my community organizers, right? The people that are on the ground, they're doing all the work. How do we help them?
Ooh, that's such a good question. Because I think it's beyond mental health. Like, it includes it, but that isn't exhaustive.
That's good.
It's about making sure that people have the support that they need. A lot of our boots on the ground people are also not compensated fairly. They don't have the resources to really uphold the impact of their organizations. And so it comes from all of these different angles, which is why community is so important. So if I'm a mental health consultancy, it may be important for me to partner up with an organization that can donate other resources, whether it's, direct grant funding for an organization, or whether it's like, hey, we're going to build out a pantry for the people that you serve. So it's about coming all together for like a collective impact, especially for our community advocacy folks.
And I think, and the other part is, we're going to wrap up around this, that I also think that some of the things that we replaced, right? A closed mouth don't get fed. Some things that we've said, I think, have hindered us in some cares, right? Don't go telling our business. I don't think that that's healthy. Not that I believe you go tell all the business, but I do think that there is one trusted source that you need, to be able to do that. And I think, church it's interesting, as you were talking about community, probably in the early career when I didn't have a lot of money, right? And I wanted help. And when you said that, it was like, support. And I couldn't get support because I was not a Black woman who had a bunch of kids with 5 different baby daddies. I was a woman who hit hard times. I had no children. Yes, and I was well kept, educated, but I couldn't get support. That was a real thing. And it was like they would not help me. And it was almost as if the world was okay if I lived the narrative of what we see, that if you could live a different narrative, you couldn't get the same support. And at the time, I challenged my church. What are we doing? We talk about the underserved. And at the time I said, what about the people that are overlooked? Because it's not underserved, it's overlooked. Because you assume, because, you know what I mean? She drives this car, or, it could be donated. It could be a number of different things. And I remember writing letters, Jayla, to people, I needed help, and nobody would help. But I said, if I called everyone and say, hey, this girl is struggling, she's got 2 kids, right? She's a single mom, she's going to get the help. I'm not. And that's not fair. It's just not justice, right? Because everyone hits those hard times. And I really want us to really, I love your word, rewrite the story about how to support. Support doesn't, and so I think even when people have hit hard times and They don't want to ask. And, I don't mean to start, but I've always said, right, the word says ask and you shall receive. Doesn't say you're going to receive it to the person you ask. It just says the ask, right? We have been conditioned to believe that if we do that, that is a sign of weakness. And I've learned that it's a sign of power. And we don't do it. And so and I think that also leads us into the trauma, right, of the words that have been spoken, that we don't ask for help. And I just remember that time I wrote like 5 letters, Jayla. I think I got one and it was for $500. That was cool. It was a lot. I'm grateful for it. But which is why I shifted my business to being culturally sensitive. Stop thinking because people have poverty, you can still have no property and still need help. Poverty does not mean anything, right? It's still an important element, but don't think that everyone is in that space. So, and you made me think about that. What advice would you give to entrepreneurs navigating trauma while trying to build something meaningful?
Breathe.
Ooh.
Breathe.
Ooh.
Breathe.
I just took a breath with that.
Literally inhale and exhale.
That's so good.
Our stories, trauma, it's a great starting point, but it can't be everything. And so with that, oftentimes our trauma leads us to, I want to fix this thing in the world or amongst this population. And if there's an impact that you want to make that is outside of yourself, know that you need other people. Period. Even if you're a mom, right? And the impact is, you want to make a positive impact on your new child, you need other people. That it has to happen outside of you as well. It has to be the aunts and the caregivers and the preschool teachers. And so that's what I would say. Breathe. And if you want to make an impact outside of yourself, know that you need community to do so.
I love that you say that. I did a research and I love that you say that because they have said that people who owned businesses, meaning that their husbands or their spouses are part of their business, they are happier. The business is a growing and flourishing business. But in our communities, right, what are we hearing, right? She running it. It's a one founder, right? And they even say people who have co-founders have stronger business. We have really adopted this I can do this. I did this. I created that, right? And so I think, we have to learn how to in that space of even entrepreneurship and understand it. I just tell somebody, I didn't want to start my business by myself. So remember that. A lot of times people didn't start their business because they wanted to be by themselves. Nobody was crazy enough to do what they did. That's it. Nobody was crazy enough to be like, oh, so you're not going to get a job with benefits? I'm not. I'm going to ride this. So no one was crazy enough to join me in that. And that's okay. But don't think that the person a lot of times on the other side didn't want that. And so, but they were talking about magic. They were talking about a lot of people that they've got strong businesses because they are in partnership, which is community with someone else that you can come home to be able to share, to offer, to provide some emotional support, to be able to say, I got a home cooked meal for you, whatever that is. You don't have to think about those things. And so I think that we miss out on that. So Jayla, I know that we have talked about trauma, right? And we've talked about this from an entrepreneur standpoint, but this is where we get to take a breath and have a moment where there is a brag moment. So we call it our BBM brag moment, where you get to brag about the things that you have going on in your life, personally, professionally, within the business, that this is your moment. We don't do enough bragging to change the narrative that everybody that has a business is thriving, maybe. Not to say that there's not struggle. I love that you said, we all are. But there can be some thriving things that are coming and being manifested. So this is your moment. Take it.
I appreciate that. And I'm going to even take it further, and I'm not going to brag on anything business-wise. Since I've taken some time to step back, I've realized how important it is for me to prioritize my romantic life as, a blossoming woman. And so, what I am going to brag about is the fact that I have been thinking strategically about how to be open, available, and ready for that next step alongside being a business owner. And I never saw my life as, so cohesive. I thought it would be one or the other. But yeah, so I've taken some time. I'm prioritizing. I'm getting out. I'm thinking about, how do I want my internal world to look in the next year? How do I want my external world to look? And what type of partnership I need to make that happen? And so I'm proud of myself.
I'm over here, I'm so proud of you. There was a business owner that said the same thing. She was once divorced. She says, my brag moment is that I am open to dating. And I don't think that we do that enough. And I think it's so beautiful. Everything doesn't have to be I think it just wraps up who you are, hustle, right? It's enjoying the space, and I want to share it with someone, and I want community, Jayla. And so I think this episode just really helps us to stop, I think the norms, these cultural norms, I think we just, like you said, unlearn some of them, and be open to say, I'm available, that I want to date, that I'm this. And I had a conversation with my girlfriend, and we were talking, and I had a conversation. I was like, are you dating? And she was like, not right now. But she was like, I appreciate you asking me that. Because oftentimes, right, it's like hey, how are you? How's things going? But to just have that moment to say, yes, I am open. I think that's kind of it's we don't do that. Taboo. Don't say that. Don't, and I think it's okay to do that. It's so funny, Jayla, because in other communities, they do it all the time. I'm with my, other girl. I actually met a guy last Tuesday, and and so thank you. And your brag moment, that is a brag moment that we need to hear, because I still believe in Black love. I still believe that Black love is what really helps to shape community. And so I think the trauma that I do see too is that, right, we're the number one in divorce. We're the number one in diabetes. We're the number one in these things. But if you ask us how many of us are married, then that's the problem. To me. And I'm just doing numbers, Jayla. I'm just taking the numbers, right? So if we're number one in there, but we are least many of us aren't married, or many of us aren't, able to do this or co-create or those things. It didn't that seem like that's probably part of the problem why we're number one? But I think I heard someone say, they said, when you get married, they said, you're happier. You go to your doctor's appointments. You live longer. I said, but I didn't hear that message, Jayla, coming up. I didn't. I just heard, real talk. I just heard, make sure you have your money set. Make sure you do this. You didn't hear you could live longer. What? Baby, I would have been yes, let's do this, but that wasn't in our stories. At least that wasn't in my story. So guys, rewrite the story. Jayla, please tell them how they can connect with you, and all the ways that you are available to you based on your boundaries.
Yes, feel free to connect with me on Instagram at advaco.collective. That's ADVACO.collective. You can also check me out on LinkedIn, first and last name, Jayla Head. And again, I'm super appreciative to be here. Thank you so much for having me, Larvetta.
Thank you. You are dope. You are so dope.
Thank you.
Man, guys, the way I met her is through some of my young dope moguls. And they were like, Larvetta, she is dope. And she is really, really dope. And then so I'm so grateful that our paths cross. And I know they're going to continue to cross. I just feel
Absolutely.
that for that. So why do Black businesses matter?
Black businesses matter because we matter. So anything we do matters. And I'll leave it there.
I love, yes. So you know that we believe in Black businesses having Black joy, giving us permission to celebrate our joy. For so many years, we weren't given permission to have joy. And so here, every guest shares what brings them joy. So what brings you joy?
Community. I love a good sip and appetizers with my homegirls, a good rooftop moment, hugging on my people, seeing us smiling, Anything that is not isolation, it brings me joy, especially when I see a bunch of us. So
I know.
Yeah.
It just makes your whole heart just like,
yes.
I know. It just fills you up. So guys, I know we could talk all day. Y'all know we could talk about this, but I will say that Jayla, really, if you didn't take notes, you probably need to go back and listen to this, because this is an episode that you really want to, one of the things that I want people to do as we continue to launch this episode, play it with your family. Sit down and listen. For some of them that are on video, and just say, hey guys, let's just listen to this podcast and allow for there to be engagement and talk and do that. That's what I see from I'm building community where you can listen to people that are doing it or have done it and are figuring it out as a resource. Because the one thing that Jayla is saying, we need community. So connect with Jayla however you want to connect with her. She is a rock star for my organizations that are looking for a dynamic leader to transform, narratives and shift, cultural norms so that we can become culturally sensitive. She is our girl. Jayla, you have been the best guest in this season 10 of my life. Thank you for making me feel uncomfortable, but telling me that I can rewrite my story. And I am starting a whole new life and rewriting my story. So thank you for telling me that it's okay to do it. And I'm ready to do it, right? At one point I wasn't ready, but I am ready to do it. And I love that you said that. So thank you guys. I appreciate you all for rocking with us. I mean, we've got so much in store this entire season. I mean, it's just been some amazing business owners. Some days I ask myself, am I done? And the man I serve is God. And he says, I am not done with you yet. So he's not done with me. So I'm going to stay on this path, on this podcast, and y'all just keep rocking with us. Thank you for just rocking with us. Thank you. And we will see you next week. Goodbye.
The Black Businesses Matter podcast is produced by the L3 Agency, a culturally sensitive influencer, marketing, and communications firm in Chicago, where relationships are our currency, passion is our profit maker, and people are our bottom line. Follow us on Instagram at Black Businesses Matter.